Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hello. Just checking. Decided to hang on. AirPods. Good. Yeah, I am good. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm guessing you have a virtual background there.
Yeah, this is a place we went in Srinagar, a
Oh, well,
museum.
that is very cool. Very cool indeed. It got a bit noisy in the background. Can you hear anything noise-wise?
Yeah, there's slight noise, like you know, the white noise, right?
Right. Let's hope it won't be too bad. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hey guys, it's hot. We're at 36 degrees Celsius here
Oh, wow. Where is here again? Can you remind me?
in North Carolina,
Oh, yeah,
which
that can
is
get very hot.
it can get very hot. So we're just running air conditioners, and there's a drought going on, and not enough water. All the plagues are happening.
All the plagues.
You got the Roman cage matches happening, and the white, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Gladiators.
Hello from brunch. How are you doing?
Hello, Peter. We're just talking about all the horsemen of the apocalypse and all the plagues of the weather. Peter Demetrius was saying, sorry, Peter, what were you saying?
Oh, just we got the it just piles on top of each other with the cage, the gladiator championships last night, and the weather being too hot and too dry. El Nino apparently is going to keep that for this season. So
Yeah, it's getting unpleasant, that's for sure.
well, you're going to have
People have been people have been complaining about the weather for the last 60 years.
yeah. Well, the thermocline stuff, the Atlantic current that keeps Great Britain kind of nice is supposedly starting to the things are changing there that they didn't expect to happen so fast, and that might have some big things for Europe and Britain.
Yeah, that is very, very scary. We've already seen some indications of what it can be, that it's already started happening. And yeah, then we will be as cold as Canada.
Not good.
So,
Canadians love that. I mean,
well, yeah, it
the
will change.
Canadians said, not there's anything wrong with that, in Toronto.
Yeah, it will. Climate change is quite scary, that's for sure. We've had the hottest May here and going to come up and down, and little is done about it. But at least a lot of the world has woken up to the perils of relying only on oil lately. So hopefully that'll have a positive change
Yeah,
outcome.
you got to look for the silver linings in all this. A shock
Yeah.
like it just
Oh,
happened. It's like, okay, capricious oil supplies, even more capricious now.
the
Yeah.
crazy thing is, here in New York, I'm not far from Indian Point, which was a nuclear power plant. My father had worked at it during his career as an electrician with the IBEW, and it had an incredible, great safety record. It was producing 25% of the power for our region, and the politicians shut it down. So now to replace it, we are burning coal and coal plants in order to make up for our clean nuclear plant because the politicians were afraid of the radiation. Ooh, the radiation, it's going to make us all, grow a tail and have extra fingers. And it's just so
Uh,
frustrating.
I got
yeah.
so many fingers now.
I have a tail.
I do.
It
Yeah,
was
I got a
cheaper
little.
and cleaner.
Yeah,
Um,
Peter, it's an interesting point that you say that, because first of all, let me make it very clear. I fully agree with you. But also the way that dialogue has been handled. What's the name of the guy? James Lovelock, the kind of modern Gaia hypothesis. He was staunchly against. No, he was for nuclear, wasn't he?
let's
There
see.
was. I think he may have switched, but anyway, that's not really the point. The point is there are many reasons to be concerned about nuclear power, but when you look at the alternatives and what they bring us, it's not such a bad thing when done well at all. So I agree with you, Peter, but outside of the discussion itself, how it was handled really goes into the kind of stuff we're talking about. how to
Yeah, it
have.
was just on an emotional level. There wasn't any actual scientific analysis of what they were doing. It's just pure raw emotion.
I think, yeah, I'm not sure if it was completely black and white like that, but yeah, there was a lot of different perspectives, that's for sure, and it turned out not to be brilliant.
Oh, so what did I miss next week? Miss last week. My car is now in the shop waiting on the repairs.
You haven't heard the song of last week, Peter? Tom
Gotta
will
listen
sing
to
it
the
for you.
music.
Tom will sing it for you to bring you up. No, it was really cool, actually. It was, in a good way, the opposite of what we normally have. Normally, we have very factual kind of data discussions. And the topic this month is figure and ground, of course, just meaning foreground and background. And initially, when I thought about this, was a very practical thing of you're in a VR, AR space, and potentially all the information in the world is available to you. How do you deal with what should be foregrounded to work on and what should be in the background, and what does that mean? And Mohit very, very nicely pulled it into art territory, which is, of course, where the term figure and ground comes from, at least to my experience. So we went very much into that. Mohit, do you want to maybe summarize a little bit from last week, the way that you saw it, to kick off today?
Uh, mm, uh, so we discussed, when we were discussing historic events. So what happens when you are in a place, and how do you want to understand that place, given that history is not really uh, is not always just from a singular point of view. So how do you bring in multiple points of view at the moment of interaction? How do you able to assemble all these different viewpoints? And how would a person who is interacting with those historic elements, be the museum or a historic place, would want to know about those things? Would it be chronological? Would it be a lot of things at once, or would it be that that you pursued one point of view, and then other points of views opens up, and then you pursue those, then you instead of being bombarded with uh, different all the various points of views at once?
Yes. Yeah. It's the thing is, now that my own system is more usable, and I still have a lot to do before the release next month, handling what can easily be too much becomes really difficult. And when you look at it from the perspective that Mohit is talking about, you kind of want even more. You want to not show a thing, but you want to allow the viewer or interactor, so to speak, to access more aspects of it, right?
Yeah, instead of being limited. Yeah.
I do have a few slides today just to kick off a little bit. Let me just pull them up. And these are designed for you to interrupt me at any point. A little bit of figure and ground and naming. This is very similar to last week. So the discussion we've had on and off, I think we need to continue having, is what is a thing in space? And what is the space? Is it a thinking space, right? A key aspect, as I think we all agree, to really learn and generate ideas, you have to interact with them, with your brain and what is in the space. And then obviously we are the future of Text Lab, but what can be conveyed outside or beyond the text? That's really kind of where we left it a little bit last week, because we shouldn't limit ourselves to only words in space. But the question becomes, once we have other things, how much can they really say? Colors can indicate heat or other things, but there aren't that many colors we can separate. pictures take a very specific way to create. I mean, there's no such thing as a font for pictures for uniformity, although of course we have styles, but that's a different thing. So what kind of aspects do you guys want to talk about today? What's been on your mind, Peter, particularly since you haven't been here, since you've had to do other things? Actually, both Peters haven't been here for a bit. So what do the Peters want?
Oh, I just dropped a dissertation on the traditional Japanese house that I think you might find interesting. That just sort of surfaced to my radar, and the spatiality discussions and how it fits in with the environment and climate. So it might be of some interest to the group. So I shared that in the meeting chat.
Thank you. I have downloaded it and opened it. Tom, the book that you showed last week has arrived. Do you have it at hand to show? I think Peter would appreciate it because it's very related to what you just said.
Are you talking about the Stuart Brand book?
No, the designing mediums thing. The very colorful one.
Oh, actually, that was
the color Easterling one.
That was Mohit, wasn't it?
Oh,
I actually ordered.
That's right. That's right. For some reason, I thought it was Tom. Sorry about that, both of you.
Yeah, I actually ordered it too, and I've got it now too. But I haven't read it yet. So you made a few sales there. I share so many books; it's hard to keep track of. And this isn't the only place that I end up sharing books. It's hard to keep track of which one was which and where and how.
I'm just looking at this link here by Peter Demetrius. So what kind of conference is this? It looks interesting. Are you talking? You're muted.
Sorry, I was talking on mute. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I got friends who deal with that word, Greg Panish and whatnot. They do 3D animation, 3D worlds. It's all about, the 3D-ness of it. There wasn't about how you're going to work in it or anything, although, Second Life and that kind of thing was kind of a and big experiment that didn't quite pan out as well as they'd like. But all the virtual worlds are dying. I mean, they're all like no revenue stream. I mean, Xbox is selling off their little thing. I mean, people are the whole community is kind of like, oh, we're in, like it's the like the AI winter. This is the XR winter. But on the other hand, you got the glasses coming in and the new technology. You're playing with the headset and seeing how great it is, right? Apple, whether that becomes cost effective, whether they can figure out a way to make that work for mere humans as opposed to specialty. I'm working on jet engines, or I'm doing something like VR is actually medical stuff or whatever. There's all these niches that are really good, but it's a point tool. It isn't something you're going to be like Second Life is supposed to become the next, meta world. You're in the, you're living in the Matrix kind of a thing.
Well, I think that the killer app for Second Life and virtual worlds would have been VR to RL fashion, because there are only so many virtual tuxedos you can own. But if you could have your wonderful outfit in Second Life and order it and have the thing arrive for you to wear for real 3 days later, I think they can make a lot of money that way.
Well, there are apps that do that now. They're point things. You got to go to their site, and they do the 3D, show you, the thing. You can project it on yourself, or you can see the furniture in the room. All those things are happening by individual vendors that have, that's a huge investment and time and money, but it's hip enough to get people to spend their money. If they got disposable income.
Not to be too on topic, but I really think it has a lot to do with figuring ground as keywords, because I don't take my Vision Pro with me. I don't see the need of, here's my wonderful wife. Thank you. She probably thought I was sitting sideways today, which I usually do. Um, yeah, one of the barriers with the actual headset for me. And so I have the new Vision Pro, the M5, really good performance, obviously. But there's a couple of things. First of all, taking it with me, the social thing of people wondering, what the heck I'm doing doesn't really matter. No one cares anymore. So it's not that. It's a little bit of weight because I bring my laptop also. But a bizarre thing is, because Apple is very good with security, when I put it on, it scans my iris for security. And immediately I take it off and put it back on again. It's a login instead of doing the numbers, right? I do the numbers the first time after a restart. It is actually a barrier to bothering. So when I'm writing up things on my Mac about issues in the headset and stuff, to put it on, I have to wait. Oh, there's the spinner. It spins around only 2 or 3 seconds. But I have to wait, be interrupted, and then move on.
The
So
friction.
yeah, there are these bizarre frictions that, never even thought about. But once being in the space, I really hope that we won't have too much entertainment that you really want to be there all day. That would be pretty sad, real world and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But to actually work in there, working within the proprietary Apple world, at least I can bring my users' data automatically. That's a huge benefit. But that's when we really get to the topic of this month, which is, okay, every single digital thing you have, and that's available by AI, and that's available through the web, is available. But your eyes have limited opportunity to see stuff. How do we choose to foreground and hide? It's too easy to think it's all there we walk around. It isn't that simple.
Yeah.
And sometimes something I've been working on a lot this week is, and this relates to both my teaching as well as thinking about how we process information, and that is, what's the journey that brought us there? As Vannevar Bush would say, the associative trails to those products, and do we understand that? I mean, for instance, one of the things I've kind of looked at this week is I've gone back retrospectively and looked at some of the chat logs that I've had with various AIs about working through different problems and seeing how my own thinking changed. Because I'm very interested in this from the perspective of my students as well, because I'm trying to change their thinking in terms of the discipline of their thinking, not convince them that up is down and red is green and so on and so forth. But to teach them how to think creatively and problem solving and things like that. And it's a real struggle. But what I've kind of started to see as an emerging pattern is that if I look at the chat logs they have with the AI, I can start to see them struggling through the kinds of questions that they ask. And so I'm going to actually start requiring with every assignment that they submit their entire AI chat log along with the assignment, so I can go back and see the structure of their thinking. Now I can already do this with my own thinking, as I work through various kinds of problems, everything from the software platform. I mean, I had a conversation a few weeks ago about I don't know what to do next, and it gave me, we worked through a number of different alternative futures and next steps, and I have a very different outlook on what I'm supposed, on the focus of things that I'm supposed to be worried about right now as far as that's concerned. And the same thing goes with my writing. I use it to polish my writing, and I go back and forth and so on and so forth. So the reason I bring that up is, and I know this is yet another element, but how do we make associative trails visible? Up to now, we've only had like notes, right? So if you want to really understand what happened in this building behind me in 1787, you can go through Madison's notes. You're looking through his associative trails at that point. You're looking at, his notes but he didn't publish those until after he died. So, I mean, he didn't publish them, but he said, don't publish these until after I die. And they weren't published until 1840. So you got the final product, but you have no idea how they got there. The arguments, the perspectives, and those things are often as important as anything else, because compromises that we make in our thinking dictate what we ultimately end up producing, whether that's from a writing perspective or anything, basically, you're making. Every photo is a compromise. And so how do I, and if I'm trying to teach photography, how did I get to this photograph? You can't tell from looking at it. I always like to look at art and sort of think through, can I figure out what the artist's process was that was behind that? But that's just me because I'm weird. But it's really important, though, if you want to be a good artist or you want to be a good writer or you want to be a good thinker, that you understand how creative people or how people work their way through these problems. And you can see that. And I think we have not had very good tools for that. I mean, historians understand it. They complain vociferously if somebody didn't keep a diary or keep notes or something like that when they were working on whatever was going on at that time. I mean, I'm reading about the founders right now, and they're like, well, so and so didn't write anything about this. Jefferson was notorious about not taking notes and keeping track of things, and so there's a lot of gaps in the way we understand how he thinks, as opposed to Madison, who wrote down everything. And so, but that whole thing is incredibly important for understanding history, but it's also important for understanding ourselves and growing those ideas forward. Because if you can get a clear view of associative past, how somebody who's a master at it, and I'm not by any stretch saying I am, but you can get a clear idea of what somebody else is doing, that makes it much more likely that you can figure out how to do it for yourself or adapt it. So how do we show that? Yes, Frode.
You said so many interesting things. The first thing is requiring students to hand in their chat log is really interesting. I think that's a very, very good idea. And of course, then you could use an LLM to analyze the chat log as well.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I don't have to read it all.
I just did I'm processing the second half. I just did, actually, I'll show you because it's so relevant to this. 1 second. Yeah, that's all kinds of personal stuff, right? So this is the author user guide. No surprise there, but that's not the point. I'm not trying to teach you how to use author right now. But this is a how to get the best out of author. So it's all based on, I'll skip down a little bit. For instance, under writing is thinking, there is a highlighted marked bit. To write is not only put down what you know, but also generate new ideas and insights. That's what I'm presenting in that section. And then we have this, the psychology with a citation, and the neuroscience with a citation, right? It's been an interesting process to do. And as obviously, Tom, what I did with this, once it was done going through Claude, which is my main, I then gave it to ChatGPT, which never managed to give me anything. I think it got too big. I then gave it to Gemini, and Gemini say, "Oh, this is great, backing things up. This is a guide to writing, not just how to use the software, right?" There is the staging of this is, here's my assertion, here's two different backups. Assertion, two different backups. This is a feature. This is why I should consider using it. One thing that would be really good is if I had a better way to present this. Actually, I've been testing this thing where I have an issue right now. This is beta, so let me duplicate the document. Just keep it named copy. So here's one way of doing it. We have this function called contract, right? So I use that, and I'll do it here. So now you have these little chevrons or whatever. So it becomes easier to read. And then the user would go through and then click on it. And, there it is. Their issue is that the stability with embedded citations is a bit flaky. So it's really fascinating, Tom. You're talking about 3 levels. You're talking about the direct conversation with the AI. You're talking about the record of that. And then you're talking about the record of that as looked at by a teacher or other person. Because I think it's kind of cool what I'm doing here, but it's only the beginning of something. I think as we are better able to put the layers in, it gets more interesting. And that's a different kind of figure on ground, right?
Yeah, I'd like to issue a provocation. Let's call it that. Is writing thinking, or is writing the product of thinking? Or is there another element of thinking that people who can't write well is masking. And that's, I think as someone who writes reasonably well, like to think, but always, as Andy Weir says, give a man a book, he'll amuse himself for an evening. Teach a man to write, you'll give him self-doubt for the rest of his life. Uh, but we know that writing is hard and harder for some people than others. And it requires constant practice, and the more you do, the better you're at it. But it's just a form of expressing thinking. Is it the only one? Is it the only one? Is it the reason we think of that is because writing is the best way we've had, but maybe it's not the last way we've had. And
It's
yeah.
it's a fair question, and obviously, in my context, because I'm producing a writing tool, I don't at all think that writing is the only way of thinking. No, not at all. However, I do think that the hardening, the freezing, the flattening, the linearization crystallizes something. So I put a John Locke quote in here: reading furnishes the mind with materials of knowledge. It is thinking that makes what we read ours. That's about rewriting notes and so on. Galbraith, who turns out to be a Southampton University professor, wrote about generative writing, and he doesn't mean AI generative, he means human generative. It is when you're in the state of mind where you write stuff and then you realize something new, or you realize what you wrote is incorrect. So it's a bit like any construction. You may have an idea of a room, but until you start painting it, you just don't know. And also in software development, and this is why I think it's so important we try to use the headset more. Until you build the experience, it's really hard to know the full extent of it. So I am really happy to, I'm not hardcore on text in this community at this point. Really happy to think further. It's just that we have 5,000 odd years of working on the external. Okay, so. But by the way, Tom and I talking a lot. Please jump in, guys, just rudely if you want to. That's the hippocampus has a lot to do with how we deal with space. And the fact that we're at a point in science now where I don't know if you were the same as teenagers as I was, but I really wanted to know more about how the brain worked. I hated the notion of psychology. To me, that was just some person guessing what goes on, right? It's ridiculous. But having the opportunity now, where there's been so much work to see which bit connects with what in what way, it's absolutely insane. So the hippocampus deals with spatial information, but also abstract information. That really should give us a toehold into how to use the space. And if we can think of better ways to represent knowledge, we should absolutely do that. But it's really, really difficult to pre-think that. Right? It's like thinking a thought before you have the medium for it. Now, if you have something that is volumetric, how do you see that? I guess there has to be movement, right? There has to be interaction. Because if you see a picture of a cloud, you don't know the shape of it. I don't know what provocations. I mean, Mohit, from an art perspective, since you were so brilliant at bringing that up, how can you see a different specialization of knowledge? Not that Tom is necessarily saying space.
That's what I've been thinking too, lately for my project as well. That how do we populate things? In what form? But when we are surrounded, as Tom was saying, that one can reflect on one's own thinking. And with that thinking, maybe we have records, those that we ourselves have made. But in explorations, how do we assemble those and bring all of those records, like keep maybe keep our chats with AI regarding a subject. Maybe we can assemble those things, but can we simultaneously assemble along with those chats also our reading lists, also our maybe podcasts. And what happens when when we have got such volume of things and not all in text form? Like maybe and how do you retrace, one of the things, it's perfectly doable to retrace something inside of an application where there is a record, like in a chatbot. Maybe we can retrace our histories in a browser, but we probably can't retrace our understanding of things. you know it's only in retrospect that we can understand how we understand things, that we have had such influences. We have had the influence of such these artists, these neuroscientists, these. But during the act of doing, during the act of understanding, we may not be fully aware of those things. But what essentially do we need, when we want to, when we are thinking of augmenting our cognitive capabilities? Like, do we really need the record of all our interactions, or do we want uh, 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 or do we want a new ways, through which we can connect those desperately far off things which earlier we could not connect? Like, a lot of the things will stay outside of our note taking applications. But how can we bring those things together when we are thinking of interacting with multimodal elements? What would those interactions, what would those interactions look like when you have text and a video and some other format? Right now, each of these formats stay in their separate windows. But cognitively, we are not separated. Uh, we will be interacting with AI. We will be thinking of maybe a picture painted by some artist. We will be thinking of something we read, and right now we depend just on ourselves most of the time to bring those things from the background and into the platform. I guess we can't really predict fully. If we were to go in the direction of trying to predict at the right moment the right things that a user might want, probably we would fail. That would just be chasing the goal of making the most accurate recommendation system based by synthesizing all the interactions that a person has, tracking in 24/7 in all their devices. But maybe what instead, one of the things that we can do is make the mediums through which we interact with things more conducive to such sort of cross-pollination between these various objects of our interactions, so that the sort of the cognitive load that earlier our brains, dark matter used to do, maybe the medium of cognition can do. Medium of interaction can become the medium of cognition to a certain extent, not fully, not doing for us the thing that we each individual would do, but be more conducive. So I've been thinking of, what capabilities does the medium need, and in what form, so that the medium can assist us in these things.
I like
Because
the idea of using it to connect things. Yeah.
yeah,
To
because
connect different spaces. I mean, yeah. I think the days when we can sit around quietly in a library and that's the um, sum total of our absorption of intellectual information are long over. And it to me that seems luxurious, to be able to say, okay, this is my universe. These books are my universe. I'm going to explore my universe. It's a very big universe, but it's still I control the bounds of it. And now I've got people throwing information at me from all directions. Some of it quite good, some of it lousy, and my filters are always fully engaged to try to figure out which is which. And so, but I like your idea of connecting up because we have different kinds layers of spaces. We have mental spaces, we have visual spaces, we have conversation spaces. Um, there are different kinds of conversation spaces. One of the things again that I'm thinking about with this that I think that the chat logs give us is that they give us the ability to move forward in a conversation by ourselves when we need to. I'm not saying that this kind of conversation, I mean, I get stuff out of these conversations all the time that I then turn around and use later on and think about, and they get bundled up with my ideas and repurposed and so on and so forth. And these are the kind of conversations this is why I like coming to this, is that to have these kind of conversations that stretch your brain. I don't get to have many conversations that stretch my brain. Not definitely not with my students, and also sadly enough, generally not with my colleagues because yeah, in any case. For various reasons.
This chat
um,
is recorded,
I know.
so just in case they
Well, no,
come
actually,
in.
the reality is that it's hard for us to get together. In some
Yeah.
cases. I mean, we have a campus that's spread over 627 square miles, and
Wow.
and so that's getting everybody in one place at one time involves a lot of driving.
Yeah, no,
um,
exactly. It's not so easy just to go to the teacher's lounge. So,
right.
3 points on this. First of all, Tom, I look forward to your next write up where you are hopefully going to be writing about submitting the chat record. That's part of the work.
Mhm.
That needs to be recorded. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Last night, we were listening to a podcast by John Finnemore, who's a British comedian. Really clever guy. Has any of you heard of him?
No,
Okay.
not John
Look,
Finnemore.
look him up. It is just funny and very clever. And one from many, many years ago, way before AI, there was the device called the auto citer. So you would say, "Oh yeah, no, where did I hear that? Oh yeah, you read it in so and so paper." It would tell you. So it was kind of a joke device, right? And in the beginning, it was very cool. In a discussion, you could say, "No, I read it in some," and then it would, as the skit went on, it would be, "No, yeah, your mother told you this, and it's bullshit," right? So auto citing from your past, as seen as a fictional device, was kind of fun. Highly recommended. Now, of course, the new version of Siri does some more integration of your life. So there's a question of, thank you, Peter, for that link of integrations. But one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is, yes, it is crucial that we have the data. Without the data, we can't do any of this. And it's really, really important that it isn't just owned. So what gets fun is way back, the very beginning of this discourse, Brandel made a magic carpet of the discussions we've had where you could see color shifts and shapes depending on topics and all kinds of things. It was completely useless in and of itself, but it was a very, very good provocation to what could be done, and it was from real data. So I hope I'll get to a point where we can start doing this, where we use the things that us humans can relate to. Like if it's on a line in 3D, that's useful. It doesn't have to be always spatial, right? So, for instance, our own conversation here over the last 6 months, to have every time we've talked about a certain kind of topic, we can choose is highlighted in a way, but not as a static one thing, but as a way we can say, okay, you hold on to that, and now you make something else coming out. Oh, so what's the Brian Laurie sketch? I have to quickly have a look. Oh, yes. No, that's a good one. Yes, Stephen Fry has been such a supporter of this work. It's been
He
really,
gets it.
yeah, he really does.
I mean, that's the thing. It's funny that you brought up comedy because I was actually thinking about that. That's what a comedian does. A comedian makes connections that you wouldn't otherwise see, and then does that in the art of performance. And a writer does that in the art of writing, or there's a fine line between a comedian and a storyteller. Uh, maybe one's a little funnier than another, but they're all storytellers. But that's what you're doing. You're connecting ideas, and the comedian is a good comedian. You know, the George Carlins of the world are very good at stripping away the BS, the facade above things, and look at what's really going on underneath and making light of that. And that I think is incredibly valuable as a way, again, of shifting your perspective on things.
And that's also why we have the songs as a
Okay.
record. It's been fascinating to shock people with them, actually, especially older people. It's like they get really kind of angry that some of it they cannot tell is not human made. And I put my hand up and said, I am a human. Of course, I pressed less buttons than ordinarily would be done, but I'm still a human that made it. Sorry. Yes, we do need many ways of looking at it. So if I can force you
Can we use a
guys,
virtual space to do that?
yeah, no, exactly. So thank you, Tom. I was going to push on exactly that point. So if we look at, let's assume that we have all the dialogue around what we talked about, including all the information that's been shared to the group available in a space. Let's assume that we have a lot of other stuff available that we can put on timelines or graphs or in boxes or whatever. What would we actually want to do? And an even more important question is, why would we do it? Are we still talking about building documents to hand in or submit? Or are we talking about building knowledge shapes? What kind of things are we fantasizing about building here?
You know, from my perspective of some of the other groups I deal with, you're trying to collect it and put it on a wiki. Okay, we got to have a way to collaborate. You throw out this text set of pages, and you're doing basically building a website. That's kind of the lowest common denominator now of a shared information structure. Now, you can try to move that into 3D and do like a VR thing, but it's basically the same kind of thinking about, I just need a way to put this stuff out in a potentially non-linear form, but most of it is kind of linear. You're going to click on one link and go to the next link and next link. There's a flow through it that the way you wrote the pages, at least, come through. Now, if you do a good job with a federated wiki or different people authoring things, or there's references between things, you end up with a nice web of, oh, I can go down different paths. It's like a book with multiple choice. You follow different conversations down through the chapters, almost like a Mad Lib or something like that. But
Choose your adventure.
Choose your adventure. But I think that there is the authored thing. I want the movie script. I want the movie to lead me through the plot and not have, okay, there's 5 different endings maybe, but there's a lead time, because then I don't have to think so hard. And
But that's a different medium. I'm really interested in the ideas that that led to the movie. You know, what did the book say? What did the screenplay say? How did the director choose to realize this on film? And that stuff has always been really fascinating to me. I mean, I want to, one of the things I love watching is stories of creativity. So, Frank Zappa talking about the things that influenced him over time and how he built his music and the decisions that he made, because they help me understand the decisions that I could potentially make. And maybe I can explore some things that are in a different way, or maybe I discover some new sources of stuff that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this existed. That happens all the time.
Well,
like your book from a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the book. It's amazing, but that comes from a conversation we're having here. This little thing that we're doing here.
Right.
We uncover each other's. Oh, here's my favorite thing that you know nothing about that I knew something. That kind of thing. But yeah, if you go to like a Netflix or an Amazon, you can click on the DVDs that have the extra information, like you can click on, say, tell me more about the scene. It goes into the actors or it goes into the script or whatever it is. You've got kind of some things are enhanced with, the director's edition or whatever. Well, a little icon pops up when you're in the middle of a scene. You can go to, here's the information about how the scene was made, or here's what the stuntman had to go through, or there's this hyperwebish thing that kind of happens, but I don't think, I haven't seen the data exactly, but some of it was how many people actually bother to go through all that extra information that's tagged to the movie so you can kind of say, hey, I want to see about the movie, versus pulling all that out and put it into an extras feature that is a documentary about the movie, or here's the stuff that actually gets watched more. And it turns out, I think, doing the work of doing the embedded clicking and the embedded thing is a wonderful way of tying it all together. But the way people want to experience it is, I either want to watch the movie and get the art of it, or I want to see all the technical details. And it's nice to have that separate, as a separate dialogue, separate movie, basically, a movie about the movie. It's in the extras collection, not integrated into the rest of it. And I think that's going to keep on going. People, we're lazy, or we don't want to do the work of digging in around. We're not movie archaeologists or story archaeologists. And I think that happens for a lot of different things. A textbook, oh, yeah, I want the Cliff Notes version, and then work my way out, or the AI summary version, and then click into the real stuff. And maybe I have time to go sit back and read the full text in all its glory and kind of get all the, the wonderful stuff of, Dr. Zhivago or something like that. But, I can't say I've
First,
read
the question is, why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do we feel compelled to take shortcuts?
Oh, I don't know if it's shortcuts.
Shortcuts that help, that may hurt us.
Well, I think we're talking, first of all, I think you two are talking about exactly the same kind of entertainment. I think, Tom, you were happy to watch a Frank Zappa linear story about his creativity. So that is the equivalent of watching something else. But from the research I've been doing over the last few months, one of the things that's really clear is making a decision takes a lot of energy, right? It is really important. My tool Liquid was developed on the point of, thank you, Tom, we're going to go through that in a second. So it's what kind of decisions too. So for instance, I've noticed when I play Battlefield in the evening, which I often do, am I going to go over the ridge or blow it up or go around? I can sit in a room with very little oxygen. It's not a problem. These are flow decisions that are easy because I'm in there, right? To make a decision when I'm working intellectually, I need a lot of water, some caffeine, and a lot of oxygen. It's a very different level of decision in my brain. So I really think what you guys are talking about here is the kind of decisions to follow a narrative. Because if you're really engaged in a going down the rabbit hole, these decisions are very low cognitive effort for you. Why did Frank Zappa say that? That is an in the flow, easy choice. But if you are not engaged at the time in the same level, then, Frank Zappa has spoken for 3 minutes. What do you want next? That becomes a cognitive barrier rather than an opportunity. And this is really exciting because this, to me, is exactly what information interface design is all about. How do you make options opportunities rather than barriers, right? So if we then maybe, oh yeah, Peter, you look like you're going to say something. Please do, and then
No,
I think
I'll put myself off mute so I don't talk in really. You summarized it very well about the narrative versus the interactive dialogue and the energy level, and why people sit back and be passive. Even when you're on the phone you're just kind of scrolling and you're doing, Pokemon Go is an interesting thing. Is that well, there's you're moving around a bit. So there was a thing about that being somehow good, but it's still, you're passively looking for the other things. You're not creating Pokemon Go way stations and points and stuff like that. So there's a creator, an author viewer, an author consumer, writer consumer kind of relationship there.
and of course, a lot of it has to do with interest level. I'll never forget when along with Peter, I went to Syracuse University, and a guy who didn't go to the university stayed with the people I was staying with, and he was, basically a party guy, and didn't care for anything academic. But then suddenly, there was one thing, and he just became a professor overnight because that was his interest at the time. So, Tom, when you are going down the rabbit hole, something you're curious about, very different than having been told you have to go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how
Nobody
we say
likes to be
going
chased
down.
down the rabbit hole.
That's a very good sentence. Can imagine that'll be the song title.
I have to keep that one.
So if just for fun, if we look at Tom's link number 2, so he has all kinds of call outs, headings. Let's be super lazy and pretend we don't really care about what he's written, but we have to read it, right? Because this is nicely formatted. How can it be, let me put it this way, in a headset, be presented, quote unquote, better? What would we want to see?
It's funny that you should say that, because one of the problems with understanding flow theory is that if you it has as I say at the very beginning here, the Heisenberg problem. I mean, if you try to figure out if somebody's in flow or not, you're pretty much guaranteed that they won't be in flow the second you ask the question. And so that's always been a major issue for Csikszentmihalyi, who's trying to figure out how to analyze it, who to study it. And it's been a real will-o'-the-wisp, and that's something that how would you do that visually? I mean, I don't know, but it's even more invisible than usual because of the fact of that, because it's a real will-o'-the-wisp.
So I'm going to lovingly and respectfully ignore that, because I think when someone is reading this, they shouldn't necessarily be in flow while they're reading it. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
So let's say we have a new person to the group, and this is, I mean, one of the key things I would want in an ideal environment is, you're right, about 20 years ago, I started writing a book. I want the word I to be defined. Who the heck is I? Right? You, the author, like little things like that should be immediately findable. But visually, how would you, let's just fantasize, because this is what are you saying, Peter? Peter Wasilko, please speak up.
Determining what I references.
All right. What?
Determining what I references.
Yes. Like a glossary or yes. Okay, I see it, yes.
Yeah, so anaphora is the linguistic term for leaving out the proper
I see
item.
it now.
My favorite version of that is from Life of Brian, where he goes, "You're all different," and one guy goes, "I'm not."
Indeed. So I lost. Something's happened to Safari. The tabs are not in the order I expect. Let me just try to find the page again.
Is she not protecting you?
Very, very odd. I'm just going to click on your link again. So, any thoughts on how this should be presented? Oh, yeah, Peter Demetrius, usability lab, all of that stuff. No, I'm much more interested in what you as a person right now would want. I mean, you've seen like the mock-ups. Well, what I have in author, you can see sections in whatever way you want. But that's really quite literally primitive.
Yeah, I was thinking about the fact that I haven't been through a lot of human factor stuff way back many years ago when it was relatively hard. You can get clicks and stuff. You've got eye tracking and stuff. If you put on a headset and you know exactly where people are spending their time and whatnot, and I know for at least third hand, but some of the military systems that present, the 3D synthesis world around you. You're in a cockpit, but you're looking around at all the radars and all that. The information systems there. Amazing psychology, amazing amount of work going into there, and hopefully some of that peels out into us in the real world as opposed to being in that specialty case of
well, the tracking,
$1 million cockpits.
The tracking also comes down to privacy, which is why Apple's headset does it really well, but me as a developer have no access to it.
Yeah.
So that's a question that goes back to the data. We often think about the document type data coming in, but what about the data about us going out? Where do we want that to be? Because it could be interesting if we have a meeting with lightweight headsets or whatever, that it tracks our mood and all kinds of good stuff for our own benefit. So that over a year or 10 year, whatever, we can see, I was really annoyed here, but this is when I made progress or whatever it might be.
But there's an invasion of people are looking at each other's bodies, or
Well,
hey, my
exactly.
eyes are up. Well, my eyes are up here. Look here. There's
Well,
that kind of thing.
considering right now you can only see about this, it's like,
I mean,
yeah.
women can have trouble. People can have troubles with things. So there's a lot of things that's going to track that are legitimately worrisome.
So,
but if you're going for a click, like you're doing gaze click, or the kind of utilitarian things that you're going to say, oh, you clicked on the link or you followed down this piece of the rabbit hole. Maybe you do like video gamers do, where you just go along for the ride, and they YouTube stream their stuff, and they're playing the game at a level you can't, but you can participate in it, and you watch. You're on a movie of him playing a part, driving things. So as a professor, you're kind of doing that in class. You're leading people through the sources you've given them and whatnot, and saying, here's my point of view. Here's a narrative I'm giving you for the duration of the lecture. And hopefully, you refine that over the years and becomes, almost a staid thing. Then maybe a book, and then maybe a video series, and then they try to get rid of you because what do we need you talking about it when you're talking about it in a YouTube video, and the materials are available on open curriculum stuff, which is another issue about, do you give away too much of yourself, or how do you make a living doing this when, I can give this away, and all of a sudden the AIs know everything, have done all the tricks that I know about to make my presentation smart and interesting. Now, when am I needed to, how do I make my living, or how do I monetize that, or how do I make sure that I'm not feel exploited in a bad way?
Yeah, that's a concern. We got to sit somewhere in the food chain, whether it's on top or wherever. And this is why I like Tom Hames's notion of hand in your chat record when you hand in your work. I think that's eminently reasonable within an academic context. But we're looking at, I'm being really hardcore here. We're looking at this particular article. It's got headings, it's got italic text, bracketed text, links. What could be our fantasy way to experience this? I mean, should it be rectangles in space? Should it be something more floaty? Should it be shapy? Should it be more arty? Should it be soundy? Dreaming is hard, isn't it? We're going into Tom Hames, one of Tom Hames' articles.
Part two, part one.
It doesn't really matter, but I'm looking at part two myself right now.
Okay, let me start with that. So we're looking at the same thing.
The silent partner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Kelly was a bit of a good digger.
Yeah, I could see that the quotes popping off to the side or something like that. Just looking at it in 2D. Okay, it's a long scroll through it. Okay, I'm scrolling on my phone, or scrolling on my browser right now. I'm not on the phone.
Yeah, this is an unusually long one because I wanted to show more of the indented paragraphs are all from the chat. So I wanted to analyze the chat. And so a lot of the bulk of it is the chat itself. And I didn't think there was, I already had it condensed some of its own answers. But I couldn't figure out how to make it any shorter.
Yeah, well, given the tool, I mean, I'm not sure what you can do in Substack to make that happen with some HTML trick of popping off on the right, whenever you get to it. So
yeah, make it look more like an annotation.
Yeah,
and that with Substack, I don't think you can do that, but that's certainly what Ted Nelson would say.
Yeah.
You have
But other than that, it's the right length. I mean, it's a good length, besides those making the thing longer to scroll through.
Yeah.
The friction you're talking about here has really come up in the guide that I showed you earlier. Dave Millard really highlighted to me a few months ago that there is good and bad friction.
Mm-hmm.
It is important that we support people doing the friction, but let's try to ignore the contents of this really good piece and look purely on the presentation. The thing is, to be boringly provocative, it might just be that the best way to read this, considering we take the basic position that you're standing up, you're not seated, right? For the sake of our fun discussion now, to really use the space. Maybe it is one column per section on a wall. Maybe that's just brilliant. Like Bob Horn, who is in our community, he did massive wall-sized murals. Sorry, my computer went funny. That may be enough.
But you have to
Okay,
then
a
come up with a way of
circular wall.
navigating between columns. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it'd be maybe a sphere. You can have multiples, but you basically have the pages laid out like you would lay them out on a big floor. But I think it wouldn't be a flat one that you have to go to the side. It'd be probably something more circular around you, so you can just kind of turn and look. So you don't run in. You don't have to walk into the walls of your library or your office to get to it. I think that would be two different ways: a flat that you have to walk across, like you're walking across a mural and looking at, or poster booths, and you're looking at one next, versus a kind of a rounder kind of thing where they're all laid out in some big circle around you.
The thing about that is really on the nose, because with the Sloan work we did, it was basically swivel chair, and you were sitting in either a cylinder or a sphere, depending on how you defined it. And that has many benefits. It can be used in someone's office. You don't have to worry about hitting walls. But one of the detriments is it doesn't really take advantage of space. You can have things a little further away, but if you do have to walk, then is the whole hippocampus thing. Then the physical space and the knowledge space becomes intertwined. So let's say you are used to take the most boring one. You have columns, and the one on the left will always be chapter 1 or abstract. You will just know that when you read something. You go there for that. References are there. So you can start leveraging that. I pressed the button by mistake. I was trying to get the chat window up. Sorry. The thing is, I'm also very often in a seated position, especially when testing. So I also want to do this kind of stuff. But the benefit of getting up, you get a bit more blood flow, you get more spatiality. There are some benefits to that, but a problem is the human sharpness it's only about this size. It's not much, right? The fovea is tiny, of course, but easy movements are about this size. A4 sheet held sideways, that's about the best reading. So everything else, when we move around, becomes background.
Of course, we're trained to do that. You know that.
Well, what do you mean, Tom?
I mean, we grew up reading paper.
Well,
I still have some on my desk here, so this is
I think it just happens to be that's a size that fits, because if you look around on something like a 14-inch laptop, which is what I happen to have now, your head doesn't have to move a lot, right? So if you stare
that
at
could also be because the laptop is designed with the paper as a implicit thing. And again, it's a question of why do lawyers use legal size paper?
Peter, why do you use legal size paper? Oh, Peter is
Well, basically, it's just tradition. I don't know how it got started. It was always what they used. And actually, nowadays, there's less and less use of legal size paper because law students just buy whatever legal pad is easier to find, and generally letter size pads are more common than legal size legal pads. Part part of it also came from court rules because courts mandated that they wanted to have the longer sheets of paper to reduce page count so that the stacks would be a little bit shorter. And it just sort of carried over from that. Actually, it'd be very interesting to have someone go and research the history of that.
But Tom, there is also the physicality of eye movement, because I did do the research by doing measurements in dialogue with Claude. And so Claude measured the fovea, best reading distance, eye movement, head movement, and all that thing. And it said that our physiology approximates a 60 centimeter away, A4 sheet of paper, roughly. So I don't know if it's because we're trained, because if anything else, you have to move your head, right? And that has a cost. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We shouldn't sit still all day at all. And this is, of course, why I'm very much advocating, getting up and moving around. But in terms of active reading, we can't read anything off center. We just can't do that, right? It has to be really close to center to be readable. So once it goes off, either we have the motion or we have something else. Of course, outside of this vision, we have motion is much more sensitive. So we can build into what happens motion-wise. You can see anybody moving at the corner of your eyes, really with high acuity. We just can't get the detail of it. So this needs to be taken into account.
The A4 size or the paper, I don't think it's a matter of us learning it. I think the paper has learned this is what works for humanity, because they used to print broadsheets and all sorts of weird things on printers and whatnot, and for a big poster maybe. But again, like you say, you got the fovea, you got the head motions and all that. A4 is successful as a piece of paper size because it matches our psychology or it's pleasing and comfortable. And so I don't think it's a matter of us learning it. The paper has learned us.
Well, I mean, Tom, one thing that Fabian made me do, which was very useful, 2 years ago now, he made me take a magazine or a book, cut it up, and put it up on a wall. I did it in XR, so it was, didn't have to use a wall and tape and all of that. So that was another way of looking into how it should be presented. But I'm very happy to try to mock up other ways of looking at it. One of the things that's nice with the Apple headset is when you choose to look at a panorama, even if you just create it on the Mac, you can make it almost wraparound. So it's really easy to mock up different kind of layouts. I'm very, very happy to do more of those.
One question I have is, if you're in the VR space and you have bunches of papers like we've seen you lay up there in that space, are you really looking at one paper? You're looking at the whole universe of papers there that you've got in the space. And that in and of itself is a visual cue. So it's not just the contents of the page, but it's the context of the page.
And all the positions. Yeah. Left to right, it's above, I go 3 up, that's where the thing that I was interested in, 3 down or 4 over. If you put them in a big matrix of pages versus a linear set, you might actually have better, that's where chapters come in. Okay, maybe each row is a chapter, and that way you can go from chapter to chapter easier, but just raising your head and looking up there. Oh, and make your relationships there. So that might be
one thing I just discovered about Substack is if you look on the left side here, you'll see these little hash marks. If you click on those, they will show you the different section breaks and take you straight to them. They're like anchor links.
Oh, nice. They hide the little left-hand contents. Nice.
Yeah. But the reason that matters is from the perspective of what we're talking about, having a navigator, a control panel, a game controller, whatever you want to call it, with you in the virtual space, can be important in helping you. Maybe it contextualizes it for you. So instead, you do have these different sections floating around as different bits, but then you have this linear list of the way that the author intended them to flow. And I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think there is an argument there to be made for having a navigation controller that
Yeah,
doesn't just
that's really
move you
nice.
around, but also works through content.
Because I just did it on Substack. I've never used this before. If you leave the contents up on the left hand thing, just leave it up, and now scroll
Yeah,
to the right hand side. It just says, "Hey, where you're at," and
yeah, yeah.
it's
It's definitely
so.
interacting.
So I
So,
think in a VR world, what would you do? Maybe you'd have each of those chapter titles be a row of pages someplace, so you could read them right, left to right, or I don't know, maybe
Well,
stacked back to forward or something. I
so
don't know.
here's a related issue because
You
yeah, no, sorry, please continue.
Yeah, that what you're doing, the related issue, we're going to go
Yeah.
into it. I think that's the same kind of problem you have with those headings and the stuff that's extracted out. How do you do the
So there is a
out?
difference I find between navigation and overview. So if you go to an outline, which is what that was, it's really not always that useful. I mean, now I'm zooming in, so it's only level 1. And if I know I want to go to cuttings, fine. But when you're reading something fresh, how often do you know that you want to jump from the intellectual sparring partner to scaling the unscalable? It's something that I love. I would have loved to have made this, but I also think it is not that useful for that reason. So this is why I've been experimenting with, why did you choose to leave the text? It's either to go somewhere else that you know, as a kind of a reader or proofreader of your own work, or it's to get a clue of how it connects, right? So that's why the difference between
or
outline,
it's a second reading and you're trying to navigate your way back to, oh, I remember reading this in this section,
yes,
and then going straight to the section, and then you only have to review that chunk of text instead of scanning through everything to get to that point.
yeah, 100%. That's what I mean by navigation.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. We're talking about the same thing. So if you now want to check what you've written, if you want, then you may want to go to the overview, which serves a different function, right? So in an overview, as you all know, the question is, in addition to the headings, what should appear? There are many different ways to design that. The user themselves can choose keywords, color keywords. All these things can be added. It really depends on what you need. So here's a different view where you have these keywords generated, and there's a very specific one for citations. So here you see under structuring, these are the titles that have been cited with the author and date, right? So that's what I mean that is worthwhile discussing is, I'm gonna get out of sharing mode here, is why do you not want to see the whole text? Because you don't always. Is it to go somewhere else? Is it to find something that you're looking for that you don't know? Is it to, as an author or reader, understanding the spine of the argument? Is it to see what backs it up? And how can we more spatialize this?
I think it's the and okay, so a little disclosure here, and that is I usually write these things, and then I drop them into Gemini and say, where are the natural breaks here? And I have it generate those titles because I don't always see them. And of course, I'm not just blind. I don't just blindly put them in, but then I see a connection. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or maybe I'll rephrase the wording a little bit, or I will leave one out or add another one. But it gives me a huge head start and also gives me a different set of eyeballs because I have a mental idea of where I think the breaks are, but I want to design them so you know where the breaks are, you know where the sections are as the reader. Because at this point, I'm not writing for myself; I'm writing for a reader. So having the AI help me with that is really handy. And so having something built into the VR system that makes it easier for the reader to navigate their way through an argument, then and yeah, concept map might be one way of doing it, but concept maps are complicated. you know, it's in I've spent a lot of time trying to make concept maps work right, and in manually. I'm not talking about, and I'm trying to make them work automatically too. And that's you know, there's always this balancing act. It's just like game design. You can either make the game super accurate or you can make the game playable, and usually those two things don't work together. And the same thing is true with a concept map. You can make the concept map comprehensive, or you can make it visually readable.
Yeah.
And having both of those at the same time is almost impossible. So
Now you see how I talk to my programmers. We used Jira, and for instance, now I thought that text was too large, the connected text. So I'm just going to do this real quick because there is a point to it.
you just made a connection in your
Exactly.
connection. Connection
Exactly.
about your connection about your. See, this gets
So
really. It makes your head spin after a while.
it does, but the reason I'm showing you this is not to show you guys a concept map, because obviously you know very,
Yeah.
very well what that is. It goes back to figure and ground again, because having one concept map is not enough,
Yeah.
right? So here, because as you saw, this is all based on the sciencey stuff, right? So I then made a map of here it is with concept, which is too much. I mean citations. This is, if anybody's interested in any of it, you know, you can see a little bit how it relates. It's basically a glossary more than anything else. So prefrontal, oh yeah, that's what, oh, and then you can, without looking at the map, you click on this and you can navigate around it as well, right? So it's another layer. But this is only dealing with brain regions, right? That is not enough for a proper document. So down here, I have things about the software, which is a bit kind of added on. So if we could have some way of, here's the hippocampus we talked a lot about, which is coming up as a link. If we had ways of reusing our concept maps or maps or whatever we call it, I think that would be incredibly useful. If we have ways of linking them within our documents, that will be incredibly useful. I would very much like to be able to link to the concept map of your article, Tom, for instance, you know, but not
Sure.
as a citation, but linking to those. But as a developer, this is really difficult because, Mohit, as you very well know, these are segregated things, right? They're not necessarily allowed to connect. So this is why, again, figuring ground. How do I choose what is in my space? It's an incredibly difficult discussion to have. Because conceptually, we just like everything there, and then we have a little piece of text we're reading right now, but it's all there. What does all there mean, right? I mean, Tom, I could imagine you putting on the headset and reading a student paper that has the chat, but it also has, let's say you make your students define the core concepts of what they're writing about, because by writing a definition, they have to say what they think it is. And you see that in some kind of a map, you should be able to, at ease, be able to have that in your map. So you could either show that student how it fits or doesn't fit, and also have it compared with what you're doing. And then we get into another topic, which is clearly you learn more by defining by yourself, but it's not really scalable. Sometimes you want stuff defined for you. You probably want your own stuff curated in a special collection or grabbable thing. Whereas, for instance, Mohit, a lot of the art stuff we talked about last week, I would want that as a separate thing that it could be augmented through wikis or AI or whatever that I can kind of dip into. You know what I mean? So how do you visually and interactively connect those two? So much of the discussion around the technologies is I want everything now. And once we start having everything now, that's quickly becoming too much.
The Veruca salt problem.
Explain. Sounds very Roald Dahl.
It's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I want it now. I want it now.
Ah,
She ends
yeah,
up blowing up, and
yeah. I remember. Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Just a few thoughts. These are not structured thoughts, and maybe these are very rudimentary. So when we were thinking about Tom's article, uh, and thinking, what can we do with it if we are to put it up in space? What are the ways of imagining it in space? So, but it occurred to me that we this scroll thing, that you start off at the top and then you make your way through to the end. This is a very specific sort of articulating our thoughts. We elucidate even in research papers or journal articles or papers, we write like that. We start off and then we arrive at the end. And that paper, that whole argument is composed of various different arguments which the author connects in a particular manner. Now, those concepts, those arguments, they themselves may be composed of various other components, which we usually do with we connect with hyperlinks. And those hyperlinks are with the present interfaces, they're opaque. You click on one and you're taken to a different window that which is sort of disconnected with the present window. So if we are to think that the any paper or any text of a decent size is composed of various other of things which the author has taken the liberty of articulating, of connecting in a particular manner, then when we are thinking of presenting it in a 3D space, then maybe we can think of decomposing it, deconstructing it, not decomposing, deconstructing it, wherein the uh, um, those like we have static hyperlinks. We can make dynamic hyperlinks, like you just like you would ask maybe like the recent iteration of in the demos of Siri, that you would ask something specific and Siri would based on your personal context would present you certain things. Maybe we can do that with dynamic hyperlinks that the author Tom has illustrated 4 concepts, and these concepts, what do they mean for Mohit? And Tom has connected them in this particular manner, in this chronology, in his article, that he goes from this to this, because any author in a thing, we are trying to build on thing. So we are trying to build on what came before and then this, so that the third part of the article has already built up on the previous 2 parts. So the fourth part, if you were to read it like keep just straight ahead, our understanding of the fourth part would be different had if we have not read the previous 3. But a lot of times, maybe we can take the liberty of deconstructing a piece of information, because as long as we are restricted to this the traditional writing mode, which goes from left to right and from up to down, and we have to go through it. So there may not be a lot of creative ways of presenting this format, even in 3D spaces. Maybe these are just my thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, as you said earlier, we got to have the information to build the systems. And secondly, the really thorny, or not thorny, difficult question of how would we actually interact with it? It's relatively easy to say we should be able to take this and look at it that
Yeah,
way. But
yeah,
then
absolutely.
what do we mean by look at it that way becomes a challenge. I mean, I know that I've learned a lot from doing author Vision OS over the last 6 months, because a lot of it is wrong. Like the little information blocks in space, they're too heavy. That kind of stuff. But you got to build it to find out, and it's hard. It's hard to figure out, and I've decided I'm going to release author vision in the middle of next month, and then I have to stop development. It's just very expensive, and it's been stressful to try to solve the problems of XR, and I've decided that's not what I have to do. What I have to do is just enough for Apple to be interested enough to help me promote it a little bit. It's basically marketing. But even to do marketing means we have to think of something sexy, something fun, something engaging. Because the first thing when someone puts on the headset, I don't know if you have the same experience, when someone can move a piece of information from here to here, literally mind-blowing.
Yeah,
Then after a
absolutely.
few hours or days, it becomes, that was cool, but why? Now we got
The
to get to the
novelty
wow
fades. Yeah.
and the work.
Yeah, you're
right?
not moving paragraphs like, oh, I can edit my document by dragging paragraphs around. That goes just like, okay, 10, 15, 20
Yeah.
minutes. And that's like,
Yeah.
I want to copy, I want Control X, Control V is a lot faster.
Yeah, no, exactly. There is, I mean, you remember the beginning of mobile phones. Some people would say, obviously they were very expensive and not everybody had them. So it was like, if it's important, they'll call back. Remember that argument? And then, we kind of became addicted to them. So,
Call waiting.
Well, I remember the interface. I mean, you got, Palm Pilot, BlackBerry, the kind of interfaces that encourage people to behave in certain ways when you got a thing, this size or smaller, half the size now. It was interesting psychology to figure out how they made that work for as many years as it worked before it died
that's
off.
really insightful, Peter, because having half the device be a keyboard really presents the importance of that device as a typing device.
Yeah.
It's what it does. So Mohit, the book that you recommended, Designing Medium, talks about everything having a kind of a direction or what was the word? Can you remember?
Affordances?
No,
Some flowy thing, right?
no, not even flowy. More along the
Performing?
lines of, was that?
Performing?
No,
No.
having a direction, like an egg will always roll downhill, that kind of thing.
Disposition.
Disposition. Thank you.
Okay.
Disposition. Right. So this strongly, the keyboard strongly presented a disposition as being a primarily typing device. And then, of course, the other devices now are a more flexible and also a viewing device. It's a screen to give you stuff. How can we take this thinking, oh God, we only have 2 minutes. How can we take what you said now, Peter, into XR? What is it we need to remove? What is the equivalent of the keyboard on the phone in XR at this point?
Certainly isn't the virtual one that you try to type on that has no tactile feel. That's just toy. That's litter.
But what else should be removed to give us closer to our information? Because I agree with that for sure.
Well, I'm thinking, given you're in the Apple headset, you have a lot of gaze things that are not familiar to me in most of the VR things I've been able to do. And eye tracking wasn't part of most of the things I've been able to play with. The fact that you can gaze and click or gaze and have the focus automatically, you're doing the fovea thing, basically. Yeah, you're bringing the stuff that's important as you just move your eyes around. Now, how fast that works. Is there a lag? You can get that spin and circle kind of thing problem. That's something, I think, because you can hold everything in the headset, most documents will be really fast at saying the zoominess of it. Oh, that's clear text. The text off to the side is, chicken scratchings. It's not, you can't really read it until you turn your head and then it focuses up. Whether that's just using the fovea point of view thing, or if you're going to have that be, oh, that's a purposeful thing. You push it to the back, or it's a information hiding thing. But I think you want that to be constructed. You as an author are placing things at particular locations, or you as a reader might you position them, but then you want them at those positions so you can go back and say, that thing over here, reach for, like reaching for things in a library. I know the book is behind me at the left. I can pull it out, and that's my Java reference or whatever the heck I'm doing. I don't have to even look at the book after a while. I know where it is in the library. I just feel the bumps and pull it out. That kind of thing where you're viewing, the reader can maybe structure things differently than the author has, and then save it. It's the spatial presentation doesn't change. Like when you do another AI generated summary, the nodes explode. Now you got to actually read every node to figure out what they are, versus there's a position for that. That's going to stay, that chapter is going to stay there, that paragraph or whatever node, so that I know I can always reach over here or walk over here to get to it. I think that's going to be key, is the fragmentation you make out of it with AI or by authoring. That layout is your mind palace, your cathedral that you want to have. And if you can support that, that's
I strongly agree with you, Peter. In my world right now, that is called context. So it's not a great name, but the idea is you build a thing and you know where that knowledge sculpture is, no matter what else you're working on. So it can be visually, physically in the background if you want, but it's interactable either with everything else or separately. Because that way you know that certain things are where certain things should be, but you can still see them in relation to other things. So this is 100% figure and ground. This is exactly what we're talking about. Peter, please.
Yeah, one other possibility would be to sort of mirror the fourth programming language in VR with an implicit data stack. So I look at an object that would have the behavior of pushing it onto the stack. I look at another object, that object's ID would be pushed onto the stack. And then if I looked at a command object, it would be able to access the stack, pop those last two items off, do something with them, and then drop a new context on the stack.
What would those types of objects contain?
I might look at 3 or 4 book references, and each one of those books go onto the stack. Then I could look at the command for, list authors, and that would tell it, and then be able to basically tell from the context the fact that the last thing I was looking at was, the history of hypertext or something as a title. Then I look at the list authors, and without having to do anything else, just by the temporal juxtaposition of the items, the system would be able to know what to be working on. So I wouldn't have to drag something over and explicitly drop it. It would know the last item I was looking at was a particular book over, in the upper left-hand corner of my room. Then I look at my command palette and I look at what I want done. It could simply pluck off of the context stack of the sequence of things I've been looking at, get that list for me, and display it. Or, of course, the result would be pushed back onto the context stack. So then I could go somewhere else and maybe touch a show things here object, and then it would automatically know what data to load onto that panel when I touch the virtual panel. So
If
it's
you can
basically playing
sketch,
games with the sequence at which things are focused on in the space.
if you could sketch that out, that would be very interesting, Peter.
Okay, I'll try to explore that a little bit for next week.
Yeah, to see how that would actually look. Right. So one of the things we established today is that figure and ground is a rich topic. It's going to take a while to drill further down. Any closing comments for today or suggestions for the future or anything?
Oh, I made a comment about RSA. I'm thinking about the presentations that have the flow where there's an infinite diagram that kind of turns and rotates and has kind of like a cartoonish, like, you're drawing the figures as you go. I'm trying to find the reference to it. I get confused by the Royal Academy of Sciences site. Royal Society of Arts.
Yeah, there are so many decisions to be made. Like, are we talking sculptures, cubes, walls, free floating?
I think from my perspective, looking at what you're doing, not in the headset so much, and I don't have an Apple headset to play with, but looking at it in terms of what I'd like to see in a 3D environment, that hanging my documents up in, like you're drawing photographs in a room or on clotheslines or whatever it is, having that physicality saying, I can break a document up and maybe the AI explodes it first one and then I move it around, have that be my mind palace for my copy of that document, that book. So I can go back in and just reach for it or know that it's there. That's almost a degraded form of what you're trying to do, but I think just that alone would be a great facility. It's like I have a PDF, I have a bunch of library books, and I have my slicing and dicing of it for my project or my workspace, whatever we're going to call that. Context is a little bit too, like you say, bland term.
It is. We'll have to keep thinking. And thank you very, very much, guys. I look forward to Monday week.
Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.